Well, let's look at the Relief Society. It's very clear when you study the Revelations and you study history of the church, Joseph Smith organized the Relief Society to be the counterpart of the Elders Quorum. And that's exactly how we see it organized in the church. You have an Elders Quorum presidency, you have a Relief Society presidency. Okay, what does it mean to be a presidency? It means you have a leader, you have leadership who presides. And what does it mean to preside? It means you have authority to officiate. The Relief Society is not sitting around waiting for someone from the Elders Quorum to come in so they can start their meetings. That's not how it works. They have authority delegated to them to perform their functions. They have priesthood. They have authority of God to work in the salvation of his children. And you can see Joseph Smith was, he already had these ideas coming out in Doctrine and Covenants 25. This is a very, very special and revelation that was given to Emma. And if you study it closely, there's some very key words that, to me, just jumped off the page when you put it in context of a revelation given to Emma, to a woman. And I'm going to pull that up here. Behold, thy sins are forgiven thee. Thou art an elect lady, whom I have called. So that already jumps off the page. Elect lady is very synonymous with having your calling and election made sure. Right, we're talking elect lady, we're thinking queen and priestess. We're thinking highest calling, highest office in the priesthood. And that's exactly what he says. The office of thy calling shall be for a comfort unto my servant Joseph Smith Jr., thy husband, in his afflictions, with consoling words in the spirit of meekness. And down in verse 7, thou shalt be ordained under his hand to expound scriptures and to exhort the church, according as it shall be given thee by my spirit. So this is a revelation to Emma. She is an elect lady with an office in her calling and ordained to work in the church according to the Spirit. So very clearly we are seeing in the Doctrine and Covenants and the revelations given through Joseph Smith that women are active participants in priesthood.
It seems obvious here as well that as husband and wife, righteously, faithfully, equally yoked together, that both male and female have the opportunity to access the priesthood equally, that they both have an office and a duty to fulfill within the priesthood. Now here it's also talking about some of the specific things that Emma was going to assist Joseph with, including acting as scribe temporarily and things to that aspect. But essentially what the Lord is saying here is, as the wife of Joseph, you have an office, you have a basically an opportunity, a duty to fulfill, and that each woman in the church essentially has that office as well. Now, you may not be married, you may not have that husband there next to you. However, there is an office or a duty for you to perform in the church and to access the power of the priesthood in order to fulfill that duty that the Lord has in store for you.
Well, what this also says to me is that Joseph Smith could not have fulfilled his calling as prophet without Emma. She was divinely called and appointed to her office to give him support and give him comfort and help him in expounding the scriptures, to assist him in exhorting the church, and help him in fulfilling the will of God through the Spirit in ways that he needed. Right? That is when we look at the commandment for man and woman to be one flesh. It's because man and woman are only complete with each other. There are divine attributes of both man and woman and we both need each other. And I think it's very powerful language to see that Joseph Smith needed his wife to be able to magnify his calling and successfully execute the work of the restoration that he was called to do.
As we mature in the gospel, as we gain a deeper understanding of the eternities and how the Lord structures his work and his glory, as we grow closer to him, we start to gain a deeper understanding of how imperative it is that you have male and female equally yoked, moving in the same direction with the Lord to fully and completely accomplish the work of the salvation of his children. It is always the intent, the fullest exercise of the priesthood, the greatest manifestation of God's work can only be accomplished through male and female working together, working in unison, in harmony to perform the work of salvation that the Lord has in store for his children. And that becomes more obvious as you mature and grow in the gospel, not less. I mean, you start to understand that everything we do of significance requires that equal yoke between God's sons and daughters moving in lockstep according to his will and his way.
So with that in mind, Emma being called as an elect lady, receiving an office, being ordained, and called to many functions, I'm going to switch over to President Nelson's talk, Spiritual Treasures. There's just an amazing quote here. The heavens are just as open to women who are endowed with God's power flowing from their priesthood covenants as they are to men who bear the priesthood. I pray that truth will register upon each of your hearts because I believe it will change your life. We're going to get into this a little deeper about the importance of the temple and how that plays a role in the patriarchal order of the priesthood, and how the endowment gives that fullness of priesthood blessings and that patriarchal priesthood, the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood, to both men and women. Both men and women receive the same ordinance, make the same covenants, receive the same blessings, and are given the same authority through their endowment. And as this starts to make more sense, it really is life-changing to both men and women to understand these principles and understand how it makes the priesthood so much closer to us and more readily accessible, and it empowers us. And I feel like that's really getting to the point of when the scriptures say that the endowment that the endowment gives us power from on high. I feel like this is really the angle to how that power is accessed.
And we'll see as we get into some of our deeper discussions related to the temple and priesthood and women and the priesthood. It cannot be said that women do not have an office or keys in the priesthood. I know that sounds contradictory. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but there is a divinely ordained and appointed role within the priesthood that women have, and then there is a divinely ordained appointed role that brethren have in the priesthood. And because of our nomenclature, because of the culture we have, because of the way that we have administered the gospel, and with limited understanding, we typically always associate keys or offices to just what is being performed right now within the church. But as we kind of explain or elaborate on some of our understandings of men and women in their divinely appointed role, we'll kind of talk about how each are equally yoked in this process of the salvation of God's children.